Italy? Whiskey? Ah, Italy You could never unlock my secret. Oh no! Suddenly, no, leave me! I'm Let's begin. Indeed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is the Fireside Chat. And on today's show, I have a special guest. His name is Cesar Quintana, and he has a really interesting and crazy story to tell. He came recommended by Paul Elam, who I had the pleasure of having dinner with recently, and he said, hey, you should talk to this guy. And he put us in touch with each other. So welcome to the show, Cesar.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Having me.
All right. So I looked at the references that you sent me. I don't really think I could even do a preamble justice with this. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your story, starting with like what the basic premise is. So your son has been abducted by an ex, right? Or your ex-wife, I assume?
Yes, ex-wife.
Ex-wife. And she took him away from you against court orders and fled to Ukraine and from California, right?
Right.
Okay. So let's get a little bit of backstory and then tell me about what happened and where things are at right now. So first of all, who is your ex and how did you meet her?
Well, I used to be an admissions counselor for a college back in from about 2010 till about 2016, and my wife, I met her there. She was working there as well back in late 2014 or so, and that's how we met. Admissions counselors, both at the same school.
Yeah, you guys hit it off and dated for a while. And how soon after you met her did you marry her?
So I met her at the last part of 2014. Yeah, we probably dated for about a year and then got married after that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In 2016, mid 2016, got married mid 2016.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's okay to say her name, but yeah, Antonia Aslanova, is that how you say it?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, good. I pronounced it correctly. That sounds like she's from that part of the world. Is she from like Eastern Europe?
Yeah, Ukraine. She's from Ukraine.
Okay, so she's from Ukraine. Okay. So you met this Ukrainian girl in California. You were working together, well, lady rather, and you had a child together. And your kid's name is Alexander.
Yes.
Okay. And how long until, I mean, I assume that there must have been like a period where everything was fine and then it was less fine. Like what's if you don't mind, sharing that with us.
Yeah, and it was a regular relationship with regular problems. Our son was born, she became pregnant in 2018 and our son was born in 2019, and I think that's really when things really went downhill. She's an only child herself. Her parents are she's from Ukraine, but her parents lived in Ukraine. And when our son was born, her mom pretty much insisted on basically moving in with us, and that just created a lot of tension. For us, it was, and it was funny because she and her didn't get along either. But that was really the main issue. Obviously, I don't want my in-laws living with me, but that really became the when things started to really deteriorate with her mom being with us. And I mean, when our son was born, we lived in a one-bedroom apartment, which was fine for her and I. And then having her mom move in with us.
So her mother wanted to be a part of this thing, this whole setup, and this is something that you did not like. You really weren't thinking about that, or you didn't anticipate that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I presume that you are Latino like me. In my family, it's normal for women to live with their parents until, especially in Puerto Rico, where I'm from. You know, there'll be women that are middle aged and they still are in the house because there isn't a lot of land. So, and then they won't move out until they marry somebody. But then after that, like, you know, like my parents won't try to live with me, you know, and I wonder if that isn't like a cultural thing or if it's something else. I just out of just thinking out loud, I guess.
No, I agree, and I'm yeah Mexican, and it's similar, or very much the same. I mean, I have family members now that are married and live with their family. That is common
Yeah,
in Hispanic
it
in
is.
a lot of cultures, but I didn't. And you know, it can work. I think it could possibly work if everybody knows their place, but in our situation, the mom was definitely trying to assert herself as basically the woman of the house.
Mm.
And if she would have just known her
So,
place, then
right.
yeah, that might work, and it might even be something beneficial, right? And I've seen it work in in Mexico mainly.
Yeah, so there was so your mother-in-law moves in with you and there's a bit of a power struggle going on. You know, you're trying to manage the home working with this woman, and or your mother-in-law is trying to sort of, you know, position herself in a position of authority perhaps, and your wife is sort of going along with it, I assume, like she doesn't necessarily stick up for you in this situation.
Yeah, and it was unwillingly going along with it. Like she would do it, but then she'd be pissed, and then she wouldn't confront her mom about it, and it just kind of in a way take it no, not in a way, but seriously take it out on me. She'd be giving me an attitude when she was really pissed at her mom. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I know about that. I know about that. Yeah. Um. So okay. So your mother-in-law moves in. Ever since you've had your son, and things are getting more and more sort of tense, you know. And so what was the breaking point? Like what how did that happen? Like what ultimately happened?
So in about 2020, around the time that the whole shutdowns began, her mom,
Oh,
yeah, I pretty much told her mom like you have to go home. And by the way, I mean her mom, she has her husband, she has her home in Ukraine, so it wasn't like she was a widow or single herself. She had her husband and her home back in Ukraine, and I just told her you need to go home. Very entitled, right? This woman was very entitled, and
mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what happened. She said yes, okay, I understand. And this was about the shutdown started in March or so, right? And then there was a brief opening in April, and that's when she was supposed to go home. But what ended up happening was about mid-April, or about April 23rd, I believe. I was awoken like at 2 a.m. in the morning and arrested by two police officers claiming that
What?
claiming that I was just put in handcuffs, and I was complying, and I'm like, what's going on? And he said, we'll talk about it. Put me in a squad car. I sat there for about 30 minutes, and then the cop came back and said, you're under arrest for domestic violence. And yeah, that's what happened.
So you were arrested for domestic violence out of the blue. Like when you fought, did you fight with your wife? I don't mean physically, but like, did you guys argue? You know, like anybody else? Was there any let's say precedent for this? You know, like anything like that?
Well, I mean, actually, weeks before this happened, we got along the best. But I suspect because her mom was supposed to go home that month, she ended up not going home. So what ended up happening, I was removed from my home. My mother-in-law ended up staying there for several months after that. So I guess they just made the executive decision to remove me
Did
from the house.
did they show you any, like, was there any evidence, like anything they said, well, this is, you know, like video, or here's some injuries, or like what were the specific allegations against you? if any?
That I had hit my wife and that I had threatened her mom, and there really wasn't. I was arrested. I bailed out. Very shortly after that, I was only in jail for like 2-3 hours.
Oh, okay, okay. But you were detained
Yeah.
on the accusation alone.
Yes, and
Yeah.
issued a temporary restraining order. But the charges were dropped shortly
Yeah.
after. Misdemeanor, there's two. The way they handle it, they have a felony district attorney and a misdemeanor district attorney, and they both declined to prosecute for lack of evidence. But it was enough to remove me from the home.
Right.
Shortly
That's what they wanted, was you out of the home. So
Yeah.
so what did you do after that?
Well, shortly after that happened, I think on a Thursday night or Friday night. I wasn't allowed to contact my wife or go near my home. I went to my mom's house and I was there, and this was like the weekend. And Monday morning or Tuesday morning, shortly after that incident, I was served with divorce papers and a request for a permanent restraining order from my wife. Um, Very shortly after that arrest.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
where were you staying in the meantime?
my mom's house.
So you were staying at your mom's. And so she served a permanent restraining order on you. How did that go through? Like, did that end up happening, or did you fight that? Did you beat that?
Yes, I beat it. First of all, the court was delayed. It's supposed to take place like 30 days after you're served with that request for a permanent restraining order. But with the whole shutdowns, it was delayed. I was served with that sometime at the end of April, and then
So the COVID stuff was like not helpful. Basically, like the lockdowns, I'll put it that way. Um, and the way that it slowed things down in general was made it worse. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, it ended up taking about 3 months before I actually stepped into the court to for that hearing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, how did you feel about that? Like, was it shocking? Did you feel like this was like out of the blue?
I mean, yeah, I was obviously devastated. I loved my wife. I was shocked to hear that. When I got the temporary restraining order that night that I was arrested, I was just thinking, well, maybe it was a misunderstanding or maybe something, or I was just speculating. But when I was served with the divorce papers and looked at her request for a permanent restraining order, to read all these things she was accusing me of was frankly devastating. Now I look back, it's a little bit funny that I was so naive, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was shocked to read that stuff. Like, it was the first, like, red pill moment, as they say.
Oh, yeah, that'll
Yeah.
do it, right? That'll do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the saying goes. Or like that I have started saying this lately. I even said this to Paul. I said that all men are trad until they find out. So like there's no I have all the sympathy in the world for you, because I see it happen around me all the time. Even when I warn my friends, like, hey, these are the systemic problems and you should be careful, and they'll be like, no, 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 like some of them won't go in, they'll go in without a prenup or something, and they get screwed over. I've watched it around me. It hasn't happened to me, but I've seen it around me a lot. So yeah, it's devastating.
Or the famous my girl's different, or not my girl.
That's, yeah, they'll say that. They'll be, no, not my girl. Yeah. It's like, well, maybe it's not about like that, maybe it's like the problem is the risk itself. Um, okay. So I don't know. You said that you saw some shocking stuff on there that you never, like, allegations or a kind of narrative in the papers
Mhm.
that you couldn't believe were being said about you by someone that you thought loved you. Can you go into any of like specifics on some of them? Because it's some of the stuff I've heard about what women will do and when they want to, like, destroy a man. it can be pretty shocking, but I don't know if the audience can, can get it from the horse's mouth, So is there anything in there that jumped out at you that you're like, holy crap, I can't believe she said this about me?
Well, I mean, then yeah, I was shocked. Now I'm not surprised by anything, but things like that I would hold her, that I would grip her by the mouth and threaten her.
Mm-hmm.
That was one allegation, that I would squeeze her to the point where she couldn't breathe, like just like bear hug
Like
her,
bear hug her.
yeah, trying
Yeah.
to get her to comply. There was an incident, and it was one of the things too. I was naive and trusting, but obviously we knew each other's passwords to our phones, right? Um, and I saw these screenshots that she submitted from me texting her, hey, you're going to regret it if you ever try to leave me, which means she logged into my phone and texted herself that from my phone,
Oh no. So it
deleted the
looks like
message
you
on my
texted
end.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it was, well, we can go on, we could talk about that later, but what else? She had like a hand mark. She took a picture of an injury that I supposedly, uh,
Did.
yeah, and she probably, her mom was taking the picture, but somebody
Mm-hmm.
must have hit, and there was a hand mark, but I had no idea how it got there. That kind of stuff. What else was there? That I had threatened her mom. Just a bunch of demeaning things that I was saying. You're from this third world country. You're lucky you're even here. I'm an
What?
American. That kind
Oh,
of stuff.
oh, it's stuff that you said to her about.
Right, right,
Oh, so
yeah.
you okay, okay. So she thought you, and this was before. We're gonna get into like when she took your son in a
Yeah.
moment. But what I guess you were about to say, fortunately, with regards to some of these allegations, like her using the your phone to try to frame you. What? How did you get out of that? Like that all sounds terrible, but how did you fight against it?
Well, it was actually turned out to be pretty good, because there was like about 15 or 16 allegations, all about that same kind of, along those same lines, that I hit her, or that I threatened her, or that I chased her. But it was, then at the time I was working in, I'm in Orange County, and for anyone familiar with this area, I worked in Riverside, so I would actually take the train there. So on a few of those occasions, or I would take the toll roads with an Uber, right? I wouldn't drive to my office. It was about an hour and a half from where I lived at the time. So, like, as an example, we'll just use an example. Say, like, March 5th, he threatened me, and it was 2 o'clock, and he threatened me, and he hit me in the back at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I had
Mm-hmm.
train tickets to that I was in, out of, I had a train
Oh,
ticket.
you weren't there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there was a lot of stuff like that. Same with with her text messages to herself from my phone. The grammar
Mm-hmm.
was not right. English was a second language for her, so the grammar was off, and it seemed suspicious that I
Oh,
don't, I generally have decent grammar, but her
yeah, yeah,
messages
yeah.
were messed up. So um, I don't know if I can jump ahead to the hearing, or however you want to.
Let's jump ahead to the. I was just like I'm just sort of laying out some groundwork so we can see like the path of the relationship that went into the marriage, that went into the child, and then the mother-in-law stuff, and so we can see where we are now. Out of curiosity, was your ex-wife or your mother, were they citizens? Did they have green cards in the U.S. or were they here on a visa or what?
Yeah, my wife was she came here on a student visa in 2011, and she became a permanent resident around that time. So she did have documents. Her mom was here on a tourist visa and was only allowed to be here 6 months at a time.
Oh,
Yeah.
was she trying to stay here then?
Yes, the mom was trying to
Oh,
stay here. Yeah.
okay. So I'm just because it's okay. So a a plan is forming, as it were. It seems interesting, but okay. So the mom is on a tourist visa, and how long after she came here did all these allegations come out? Like, was it like within that 6 month period, or was there a period where she had to go back and come back, or did she use this instance to stay? Like, what do you know about that?
Yeah, well, she was supposed to leave around the time I was arrested. We had come to that agreement, and if I recall correctly, we had even bought her plane tickets to go back to Ukraine. And again, mind you, it wasn't one of the main reasons is her and her, my mother-in-law and my wife just couldn't get along. I mean, I know that it was a really love-hate relationship between the both of them.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't so much, and it was more so, obviously I didn't like her having her in our house either. But yeah, so she was supposed to leave that month, but obviously she ended up not. She ended up not.
Okay, so let's go to the court hearing. So how do we get to this point and what happened?
Well, I also want to say that during this whole time, I didn't even have access to my son, who was not even a year old at the time. I was completely.
Oh yeah, right. The whole time that you were under this restraining order. So how much time did you miss with your son? Like, I assume you were there when he was born, but how long between that and like when you were given the restraining order and had to leave? How much time? Like 6 months? Less?
About 4 months.
About 4 months. So he was 4 months old when you were sort of kicked out of your own house.
When I was kicked out of the house, he was about 9 months old.
9 months old.
Yeah, and then I missed his first birthday. Basically, the hearing was shortly after his first birthday, and yeah.
All right. So you didn't really see your own son for the whole time this was going on. I'll just tell the audience, if you guys have any questions or comments for Cesar, you can send a super chat, a Rumble rant, shout out to the Rumble gang, by the way. And you can send us a super chat by going to feedthebadger.com/just-a-tip. There's a link scrolling down at the bottom. You might see that underneath the JoJo cam. Okay. So yeah, just if you want to say anything, please send something through and ask questions, right? He'll do his best to answer them. Okay. So what happened next?
So we prepared for court and went to the restraining order court hearing.
And, where'd you get your lawyer from? Out of curiosity, you just went. Did you go through someone or?
No, I just Google family law attorney, near me or whatever. Just got someone else. Probably called one or first or second result that came back.
Yeah. Okay, I was just curious. All right, so what happened next? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, during the court hearing, pretty much we didn't even get halfway through the hearing before the judge said, "I'm giving my tentative decision, and I'm not granting this restraining order. I have a serious problem with credibility." She asked my wife's attorney, "Do you want to continue?" And he said yes. So we continued through the hearing, and ultimately, when the judges give their speech at the end of the.
They explained their ruling, basically.
He just said that she had a serious problem with credibility. That wasn't really guiding him. Yeah, and he said, "I don't believe this man's abusive. He's missed all this time with his child, and obviously the two of you don't belong together, but hopefully you can cooperate and be good co-parents for the sake of your child." She gave my wife full custody, and I got a couple of visitations, a couple times a week for a few hours a day. That's what she gave me at that time. But something funny happened that day, but we can get to it when you want.
Yeah, I'm ready. I mean, I don't know if that's a bit of a digression, but what's the funny thing that happened that day?
So that happened August 3rd, 2013. I'm sorry, 2020, August 3rd, 2020. And that very same day, after she got full custody, she got a DUI.
Oh no.
Yeah, and was taken to county jail for a few days. And a few days after that, my lawyer filed an ex parte, and I got full custody of my son. I think August 8th. So that's what happened that day.
Did she have a history of drinking? Generally, did she have a problem with that?
Well, I would say yes, but more so like, and I see it in Mexican culture too. Like people don't understand. Like you can't even drink one or two beers here, and you'll get a DUI, right? We're really serious about DUIs here, and that's what I think she never really understood.
Oh, so you don't think she was wasted, but
Probably
she was
not wasted, but
driving.
should not be driving for sure.
Like, yeah. Right.
And,
Ugh, okay. I'm just saying, like, I don't want to presume that she's just like total train wreck. But okay, so so she got full custody,
mhm.
and we got the DUI thing. Um, were you still not able to see your son, or did you see him for a while?
No, I mean, I got full after she got the DUI. I got full custody.
Oh, after the DUI, you got full custody, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what? I guess that's an important detail, the DUI thing. I don't think that's a digression at all. But so what happened next?
Well, I would say it was the best few months of my life to this day to have my son. He was about a year old at the time now, and we lived
Yeah.
a pretty good life.
And
His
how
mom,
was he doing back at that time? Like walking, talking?
hey, and baby talk. He would understand. He would say, "Papa."
Yeah.
Not really talking. He was only a year old, but it just gave a lot of purpose to my life. Going to sleep early, getting up early, doing things with him. It was a great time for me. We really formed a strong bond during that time.
Did you have any help with him, like from your family? I watched some of you sent me some videos, and I saw there were some other people, and I assume they were like either friends or family members.
Yeah, family members. My brother and my mom, my dad. They would watch him. Thankfully, I worked from home for a couple years now, even before the pandemic. But I pretty much handled him. I mean, I would sit here at this desk, and he would sit next to me playing his games, and he was he was a pretty well behaved boy. We'd take walks in the morning and the evening. His mom, my wife, she would have visitations with him occasionally, so she would take him a couple times a week, but no overnights.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how it went
That was 2 months
before she
right?
took him.
Well, you said it was the best 2 months of my life.
Oh,
and
a few
I'm
months.
saying
Few
it
months.
was
Sorry, few months.
3 months.
She took him December 15th. I got him about August 8th, so it was a few.
Oh, okay.
few months.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So. Okay. Well. What happened next then?
Well, December 15 or 16, she picked him up for her 3-hour visitation. She picked him up about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
And how often did she get visitations? Like, how did that work?
She was entitled to 3 visitations a week, but she didn't always follow through on them. Yeah, so she was
So
entitled
this
to 3 a
was,
week.
yeah. So 3 visitations, and they're 3 hours a visit.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Not a lot of time. I would probably have taken advantage of as much of it as possible. But were there any other ways that she or her family helped him out? Like, did they, like buy him things, send you money, or anything like that?
Not so much, and I feel for my son's mom in a way because not like her mom really was the mastermind behind all of this, and obviously she's an idiot for listening to her, but yeah, really it was her mom.
The mother-in-law.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's right. I think it sounds to me, and I mean, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but it sounds to me like your ex-wife being a single, like, an only child with a mother that is like very controlling. Like, she's like there's like that term, the devouring mother. She wants to live out like vicariously through her kids or through her kids, and becomes really manipulative, and she doesn't like. They tend to be like hostile to people that they consider to be outsiders, like
Yeah.
you, like husbands, you know. So, yeah, so they will use like their children, and I think that's, and I'm not exonerating your wife. I think that
Yeah.
she should have stood up to her, but I can see where the dynamic is at, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this
Um,
lady's nuts. Just share one detail. She actually wears my son's mother, my wife's engagement diamond ring and her wedding ring. My son's
your mother-in-law wears the engagement ring you gave your wife
and her wedding ring as well
and her wedding ring. That
to
is,
this day. Well, I don't know. I haven't seen her to this day.
and that's, yeah. Well, I think that's creepy. That's all I'll say to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's, to me, that's creepy weird. Like, if my mother-in-law was wearing my wife's ring, I'd be troubled. I'd be like, wait, my wife should be wearing that, you know? Because it's, yeah, I don't know. That's just,
That's
that just
nuts, right?
troubles me. Huh?
That's nuts, right?
Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah, that's putting it lightly. So, all right. So then, was there anything between that moment and when your son, like, when your son was gone, like when you learned that your son was gone, like what, you said that she came for a 3-hour visit, and what happened after that? Did she just not come back? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I called her and I said it's 6 o'clock. She's like, I'll be right there. And I waited 10 minutes and I said, it's 6 o'clock, or you're already late. What's the deal? And I called her, no answer. Then I text her again, and the text didn't go through, and I called 911 right after that. The cops came. They didn't really take me seriously at first. They stayed with me. We went to my old residence, where she was still living with her mom. Um, Basically, you know, broke the back door to get in, and the whole house was empty. It was empty. It was empty completely, and the car was not there. Um, and the cops, filed a report, but they didn't really do anything after that. I called at midnight, and I just, I was looking through some of my stuff here, and I told them that the passport. How can I put it? Well, yeah, I just pretty much told them I didn't know what to say, so I just told them my son's passport was missing. It turned out not to be the case, but I know I at the time I just wanted them to do something.
Yeah,
And then
sure. You didn't think they were taking you seriously, so you were
right.
like, well, yeah, I get it.
And so they came back at around midnight, detective, and he took my information. I did have pictures of my son's passport, my wife's passport, and he was here. He kept going outside and make phone calls, and then he said, we already got the people working on this. I'll call you back if there's any updates. And he left around here at 2 a.m., 2:30 in the morning. Obviously, didn't go to sleep at all. I couldn't sleep. Kept dialing my son, my wife's phone. It kept going to voicemail. And then a couple of hours in the morning, like maybe 11:30, that same detective came with another detective, knocked on the door, and he came in. Can we come in? Yeah. And he says, we have good news and bad news. I was like, what the hell? Like, I didn't know what to think. Is my son alive? Did she kill herself or something? And he's like, the good news is we found your son. The bad news is he's in Ukraine. And I was like devastated. Like, how could this be? You just assume that there's like something that'll stop them at the airport or something, but he just explained to me that my son's family, her mother and her grandmother really were able to get Ukrainian citizenship for my son since, his mom is Ukrainian. And they were able to get a Ukrainian passport for him and just said, oh yeah, we were just here on vacation. We're going home. And that's how they left the US.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were there any, like, now when you look back on it, because like you show up and the place is completely empty, like it was like nobody was there. Like, were there any signs? Did you ask yourself if you like were, had any, like, was this completely out of the blue, or when you look back, do you say, oh, there was some evidence that something like this might happen?
Yeah, definitely. I think back, she obviously had that DUI. It was actually a
Yeah.
DUI hit and run. So it
Oh,
was a serious situation.
yeah, that's serious.
And it was a DUI hit and run. So I don't know how much trouble she was going to get. Women always get treated with kid
Hmm.
gloves. But
Oh yeah, I know.
that was one thing that she had said, when that happened. Obviously, we spoke in between during our divorce. She made an effort to want to reconcile, but I wasn't interested. So there, I think of that. I think of her mom. She often make comments about going back to Ukraine, like trying to convince me, hey, let's all just move to Ukraine and stuff like that. What else? You know, at one point she asked me if we should make our son a Ukrainian citizen, which I wasn't really for. But then I thought, she doesn't really need my permission, legally speaking. So, you know, stuff like that. More
Yeah.
so, my regret was, I could have insisted on her having supervised visits, and that's what I should have done, rather than just to. I wasn't trying to like be nice to her, but I just wanted things to just move on, right? Like let's just finish this divorce.
Let's
I
just do this amicably and then
Yeah,
move on with our lives, right? Yeah.
yeah. I wasn't trying to be like, I could have been a jackass and said, and I should have put my son's safety, but I could have just said, no, you're gonna have supervised visits and all. But even that, I knew that my full custody was only temporary. I knew eventually we'd have 50-50. So I even said, let's just finish this divorce. We'll have 50-50 custody and, divide up what we have and let's just move on with our lives. That's really what I wanted. But I should have thought more, what's in the best interest of my son, obviously.
Yeah.
I've seen her, and one thing I didn't mention, I saw her and her mom come to blows a few times, like pulling each other's hair. So it was a very dysfunctional environment, and I should have really thought like, yeah, I should have thought more of insisting
Yeah.
on supervised visits.
Yeah. That's crazy. And was that so that day when she came to pick him up, was that the last time you saw Alexander?
No, that was just the beginning of all this. That
Oh,
wasn't.
so you've seen him since then?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're gonna get into that in a second. I'm gonna read. I got a super chow from someone that I'm gonna read out really quick. So if you guys could, again, you'll see it scrolling across the bottom. Send a super chow, rumble rant, or a super chat, and I will be sure to read it on the show while we're live. So great indoors. Thank you so much. He gives us $10 and says, "I wonder what part of the Ukraine she has taken his son to. Hopefully, it's the western side of Ukraine. They might even be in Western Europe right now, come to think of it." Well, actually, when this happened, the conflict had not started yet, right? Or
No.
has it? It had not.
No.
Okay, so when this happened, Russia had not invaded yet. We're getting to that part.
Yeah.
So what part of Ukraine was she? Do you know what part she was in when she first came there?
Yeah. Well, the worst part, Mariupol, Ukraine, easternmost part of
The easternmost part, so right on the Russian border, basically.
Mariupol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but at this time, at this point in the story, Russia had not invaded yet.
No.
So, what did you do next? So you learned that your son has been essentially kidnapped from you and taken to another country on the other side of the Atlantic. And you're in California, so it's way on the like way away. Okay. So what do you do next? What's your plan?
And yeah, just to clarify, yeah, he was kidnapped. She is charged with kidnapping. My son is registered as a missing person. He's on the missing and exploited children website. So yeah, it was a straight up kidnapping. But what I did next, that happened, like I said, mid-December 2020. And about February 3rd or 4th, something about along those lines of 2021. So only about a month and a couple of weeks after he was taken, I got my passport and I went to Ukraine. I went to Ukraine.
So you, as soon as you were able to, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So the passport process can be a bit of a pain. At least when I got one.
yeah.
Um, Yeah. So you get on the plane, you go to Ukraine as soon as possible. You know exactly what city she went to, or did you have to find her once you landed?
No, I had visited Ukraine once before when we were still married,
Hmm.
but I didn't go to her house. I went to the capital city of Kiev, and there is a treaty between the U.S. and Ukraine and other countries that to address these matters when parents take their children abroad. Uh, when they're not supposed to, how to return the
Hmm.
children. So there is a mechanism to go through, but in my opinion, it's a joke. I didn't know it at the time, but it's a joke. No, especially when it's a mom taking kids.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's something there on paper,
yeah,
but if you're a father trying to find your kid, it's doesn't seem to work for you very well. So you go to Ukraine and you go to the capital and you're looking for help, I assume, to like get your son back or
yeah.
something.
I hired a lawyer there. I hired a
Yeah.
lawyer and started the process. There was some support from the State Department. They have a children's issue division to that they assign this country. It's called a country officer, but they're useless in my opinion. I mean, I don't know if anybody ever deals with them. I'm not suggesting not speaking with them, but I've spoken to dozens of parents, and they all say the same thing, that they're essentially useless. That's been my experience.
Yeah.
The district attorney here in Orange County's child abduction unit, she sent some documents and a request to the Ministry of Justice of Ukraine. Of course, that was ignored. They never replied to her. I was able to get some visitations with him in Ukraine, and in exchange for some support, I did end up doing that. I don't know. I'm kind of jumping ahead because I ended up going from Kiev to East Ukraine, so I don't know how you want to take this.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, we got about 15 minutes left.
Yeah,
So let's get to the part where you go to Eastern Ukraine. Is that before and then the conflict happens after that, or what?
yeah. So I was there. Mariupol. You can look this city up. One of the worst cities to be in. The U.S. They would send emails to their citizens like warning, get out of the country. They were announcing war was imminent. This court process to return my son was pretty much a joke, and I just took
Mm-hmm.
matters into my own hands, and I got my son for a visitation one evening, um, and I just took him. I got she brought my mother-in-law brought him to the hotel for me to visit with him for an hour. Said thank you. I was acting civil, kind of playing a part, and I just said thank you, yes. In an hour, we'll be ready. And I just left out the back door, jumped in a car with the driver that I had hired, and left. And left. Drove for about 14 hours.
Where were you headed?
Kiev.
So you were gonna go to Kiev, get on a plane, come back to the States. Is that the
Yeah,
plan?
yeah. And
Okay.
I was stopped on one occasion. Probably 5 or 6 or 7 hours into our drive, I was pulled over by the Ukrainian National Police. They acted very aggressive with me, but I think back, like I just had my son in my arms, so I'm having my son in my arms. The cops made me get out of the car, and they take me to the police station. And in Ukraine is not like here. Police, well, I know police can be difficult here too, but at least here you have some civil rights.
Yeah.
And so they were kind of taken back by my attitude towards them, and I said, you guys can't hold me here. I'm an American citizen. You're making a mistake. I got on my phone, and I'm like pretending I'm talking I did call the embassy, but they're useless themselves.
Of course,
And
of course, right.
but I'm like, yeah, my name is Cesar. This cop, he's threatening to kill me. He's got his gun on his hand. His name is, and I'm reading his name, like, I need your badge number, sir. And so, like, they did get intimidated by that. And actually, I was able to leave. My lawyer actually showed up, and we got in the car and left. And we continued on. And I actually was pretty much like in hiding in Ukraine. Oh, let me back up.
Yeah, go ahead.
They couldn't detain me, right? But they didn't give me my passports back. So they stole, this Ukrainian police officer stole my passport, but I was still able to leave. And with my son, um, and then basically I was just kind of looking. I was like in hiding, got an Airbnb for a couple weeks. This is January 2022. So the war started February 2022. So this is how close things were to the war time. So, I was with my son for a while. I don't know. Where do you want me to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just looking for a way out. And eventually, we did there really wasn't any legal reason I couldn't take my son back. He was an American citizen. I was able to get a second passport for myself and for my son at the U.S. Embassy.
At this point, out of curiosity, was your ex-wife like was she wanted for kidnapping, or was this something that kind of got like a charge that came after all of this?
No, she was wanted for kidnapping almost immediately after this happened.
Okay, all right.
She was trying.
So she should have been, by all accounts, arrested. I guess being in another country, I don't know how much immunity that gives you, but yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and there's a whole thing regarding Interpol's changed their policy that they don't recognize parental child abduction as a crime anymore. So there was at a point that they did recognize it, and they would put you on the red notice for the parent, and the yellow notice for the child, but they stopped doing that some years ago. We did try to do that, but they didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I wanted to mention, this kind of goes back to my mother-in-law. Like, my son's mom, she pretty much said, I told her, let me take him and I'll help you get your charges dropped. I'll give you alimony and whatever. I was saying whatever just to leave. And she essentially agreed. It really was my mother-in-law who was like a rabid dog, calling the police, telling them that I was going to kill my son, that I was dangerous, that all this. It really was her who was leading the charge here.
That's insane, man.
Yeah.
Probably should have met her before you married this woman. Yeah, right. Spend some time with the mother-in-law. Okay, so what happened when we should? We have like 10 minutes, and I don't want to miss any of the good parts. So how long after? Like, what happened next? I want to know like what the timing is when the invasion, when Russia invaded that part of Ukraine. What was going on with you and your son? And what was going through your head?
Well, basically, January, towards the end of January 2022, is when I tried to leave the country. And unfortunately, like I said, my mother-in-law had reported that I had basically hurt my son. So there was like not an arrest warrant, but sort of like an investigative warrant on me. So when I tried to leave the country, even though there wasn't anything they could do to stop me, that they did flag me, like the criminal police did flag me and basically detained me, and they took my son from me and gave him to his grandmother. They detained me for a little bit, and he had one of my passport. He stamped it and said, you have 10 days to leave the country or you're going to be arrested. So I left January 30th, and I was planning to come back. I had a lawyer. I wanted to come back and, I don't know, just do something, right? I didn't know what, but I wanted to come back and do something. And, unfortunately, like 3 weeks after I left the country, that's when the war started. And, my son's mom called me and said, send us some money, don't worry. People here are going to welcome the Russians to Mariupol. And this was, February something, and I did send them some money. Obviously, the war was happening. I was trying to convince them to leave the city, and but they wouldn't leave, and I lost contact with them sometime at the beginning of March. The war had already started, and for like 3 weeks, I didn't know if my son was dead or alive. I couldn't reach anybody. I knew a lot of people in the city that I'd been friends with. Some of them died. Others were able to leave, and they were trying to reach somebody in the city, see if they could reach my son's family. And thankfully, again, I got a call from the State Department sometime in March. Says, good news, bad news is your son's alive. That's the good news. The bad news is he's in Russia with his family now, and there's really no diplomatic mechanism to bring a child home from Russia. And yeah, that's what happened.
Your ex-wife and your mother-in-law too?
Yeah.
Your ex-wife and your mother-in-law and your son are in Russia. They fled to Russia. You know why? Was it because they figured they could keep your son further away from you by doing that, or was it for their own safety?
I think so.
Yeah.
That's really what I think is the motivation. And my mother-in-law, she's a lunatic. She is a pro-Russian Ukrainian, obviously, and she's the kind that bemoans the fall of the Soviet Union. I don't know if you know any Russian.
Oh wow.
Yeah, like
there's literally a red flag.
Yeah. That's the kind of woman she is, and
yeah.
Wow.
So what was the last time you heard from, according to what I read, you haven't heard from your son since March 2nd. Is that right? Or heard about him, or heard from anyone about this?
No, I hear from them from time to time. I've seen him on FaceTime. He doesn't speak English. He doesn't. Before he would, I'd speak to him in Spanish and English, and he would understand. He would respond to the, even though he didn't speak it. But he just seems Russian. He seems like he's okay as far as he doesn't look hurt or anything or malnourished. But I honestly have a hard time even seeing him through Zoom. It doesn't seem,
So you don't feel like you feel like it's like they're kind of erasing your input into the raising of this child, right? Like you are a Mexican American, so he was learning, or you were speaking to him in English and Spanish, right?
Yeah.
And now he's over there, and he speaks Russian. He doesn't really speak he doesn't speak English or Spanish, or at least you haven't seen much of that.
No, he doesn't. The few times that I've spoken to him, he doesn't understand English or Spanish.
Yeah.
At all. He only speaks Russian.
Yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm always conflicted with those calls, because of course it's nice to see him, but I just end up getting angry afterwards, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't really.
Well, it just seems unjust. It is unjust. It doesn't seem unjust. It's really unjust. It's like, yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine. Like I've always wanted kids, and I couldn't imagine having a child and then losing that child, and you feel like no one is doing anything to make it right.
Yeah, it really is, and it's difficult. One note. I don't know if you saw the article I sent you. One of the things that.
Oh yeah, I got it. The Washington Post one, right?
Well, there was another twist to the story.
There were two videos. I watched them both already.
Okay,
I can't display them here, but
sure. No, but
I can show you the article. What were you gonna say?
Well, basically, when I tried to take my son out of Ukraine, I mentioned to you that one of my passports was stolen. So one of those cops that, when the invasion started, from what I hear, he was trying to leave the country, trying to leave Mariupol with my passport, and he was killed by a Russian soldier. And that Russian soldier was on Russian TV saying that he had killed me, essentially, and that I was a mercenary fighting for Ukraine.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was on the what is it, fact checking thing? I watched that. Yeah.
So I couldn't even if I wanted to visit Russia, I don't think I would, because I might be
a target.
Yeah, KGB as a foreign agent or something.
Right. Dude, that's crazy, man. So okay. So how long has it been since you last saw any sign of your kid? And what do you have, like a plan? Like, do you have a plan? Are you gonna keep trying or are you moving on? Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah. So recently, I'm actually still married, still going through the divorce process. And it's supposed to wrap up this year. I had my attorney authorize my attorney to speak to my son's mom in Russia, and to make like basically an offer because she actually can't. It'll be like a default divorce. So, we have a business and a house that are basically going to come to me. She's not going to get anything. But I authorized my attorney. I'm willing to do to make it give her even more than what she's entitled to if she brings our son home. So that looks promising. Obviously, Russia is kind of limited in their options. If she's willing to bring him home, we're willing to help her with, her legal troubles. I know the district attorney told me personally that in the interest of the best interest of the child, she's willing to drop the charges if she brings him back. So there's some hope there. I mean, obviously, you're hoping for a woman to do the right thing. That's, who knows?
Yeah, right. It's not something we incentivize,
Yeah.
which is the main issue. Not that women aren't capable of doing the right thing, but we don't exactly penalize them for not.
Yeah.
So we kind of reward bad behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So are you I don't know, like I mean, I know you're still going through the process. Is there like something that you're hoping to get people to be aware of or support or anything like that? Like I don't know, like a petition, like something, Um do you have
It's
anything in mind? Have you spoken to people like I know you talked to Paul. Have you spoken to people like NCFM, the National Coalition for Men? They have like lawyers. Um yeah, I don't know. I'm just go
yeah,
ahead.
it's kind of, maybe I'm just being negative, but when all this went down and especially when the war started, like I was in Washington, D.C. I spoke to a couple of senators. I was working with a nonprofit. I can share the name afterwards if you want, but they're a great nonprofit. They're the ones that got me all those interviews. They're most of the volunteers are were called left behind parents, like parents that their children are abducted from them by a spouse or whatever. And I mean, I spoke to like Diane Feinstein's office, who she's helped get kids back from overseas. It's to me, it's a little bit my, and I'm not discouraging anybody to do anything, but I kind of feel like the only time kids come back from overseas is when a father takes them. That's been what I've seen. People just aren't willing to help dads. I mean, even when I had my son in my arms, the U.S. Embassy was saying war is imminent. I was inside of the U.S. Embassy with my son, and they said pretty much
Mhm.
you need to leave. There's nothing we can do for you. So
Yeah.
it's hard to, and I kind of always knew that, especially not to make it racial, but even like as a Hispanic man, there's nobody coming to the rescue, which is why I ended up taking matters into my own hands. But I guess just be careful who you marry. But even then, like
Oof.
you said, we have friends that they might agree with us now, and then they meet somebody, and all of a sudden you know, all that logic is out the window.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. I think it's really
Mhm.
important. We're gonna go into the patron show, and so the
Okay.
people that like are our supporters can like go more into stuff, ask you more questions. If you guys want to be a part of that, you have to go to feedthebadger.com and set up a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord. You'll be able to watch all the additional content, participate in the live chats, and if you give it higher levels, you can even be in the Zoom call with Caesar and myself. So that's feedthebadger.com to set up a monthly subscription. We are going to head into the patron show now. So let me just do a quick once over. Again, links. I'm going to put links to all of the news stories and stuff in the descriptions. You guys can look at it yourself. Um, there is 2 videos and a Washington Post article. I think that this should be like all over the news if possible. So I don't know, maybe we can like make enough noise and get some eyeballs on this. So Thank you again, Cesar, so much for coming on. If you guys like this video, please stick around. Don't go anywhere, okay?
Yeah.
If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of the Fireside Chat, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Men's right activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.